She stood at the edge of his ranch, her little brother clinging to her hand, her eyes hollow with hunger. And with a trembling voice, she whispered the words that shattered him to his core. "We don't cost much to feed." The rancher froze, stunned by the desperation hidden in that simple plea. But it wasn't just her words that broke him. It was what she carried in her fragile arms. Something so small, so heartbreaking, that when he finally saw it, his knees nearly gave out. What was she hiding? Why had the world turned its back on her? And how could one man's choice that day change everything? This is a story of hunger, of survival, of secrets too painful for a child to carry, and a truth so devastating it would tear open the heart of even the hardest rancher. The wind howled across the barren plains, dragging dust over the wooden fences of the old ranch. The rancher, Jacob Miller, leaned against the corral, his hat pulled low to shield his weary eyes. Years of hard labor had carved lines into his face, and though his cattle grazed in the distance, his heart carried the weight of loneliness. His wife had died years earlier, and his only son had gone off to chase dreams in the city, leaving Jacob with nothing but silence and the creak of an empty house. He thought he had seen every kind of hardship the land could throw at him. But that morning, as the sun cracked the horizon, he saw something that froze him where he stood. Along the dirt road leading to his ranch, two small figures moved slowly, almost dragging their steps. As they drew closer, Jacob saw they were children, thin, frail, with clothes torn and patched beyond recognition. The older one was a girl, no more than 12, her arms tightly wrapped around something she carried. Beside her was a little boy, hardly 6, stumbling from hunger, his hand clutching hers as if she were his lifeline. Jacob walked toward the gate, his boots crunching against the gravel. The girl stopped, her wary eyes meeting his. They were not the eyes of a carefree child. They carried the shadow of suffering, the kind only seen in those who had been hungry for far too long. She opened her mouth, her voice fragile, trembling, but filled with quiet dignity. "Sir," she whispered, "we don't cost much to feed." The words struck Jacob like a blade. They were not begging, not even asking for kindness. They were offering themselves as if they were burdens too small to matter. He swallowed hard, trying to keep his voice steady. "Where are your folks?" Jacob asked, though dread was already creeping into his chest. The girl glanced at her brother, then looked down at the bundle in her arms. She did not answer, only held it tighter, as if revealing it would break her. Jacob saw her hands trembling, but her face held a strength far beyond her years. "Please," she said, "he hasn't eaten in 2 days. I can work. I'll clean. I'll wash. I'll do anything. We won't ask for much." Jacob's throat tightened. He was a man hardened by storms, droughts, and the unforgiving soil. But there was something about the girl's words that bent him in ways he could not resist. He gestured toward the porch. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's get you something warm." The boy's eyes flickered with a faint spark of hope, but the girl hesitated, her grip on the bundle never loosening. Jacob noticed it now. It wasn't just rags or belongings. It was something she was guarding with her entire soul. Inside the ranch house, Jacob set bread and stew on the table. The smell filled the room, and the boy climbed onto the chair eagerly, shoving food into his mouth with shaking hands. Jacob placed a steady hand on his shoulder, slowing him down before he choked. The girl sat, but she didn't touch the food. She just watched her brother eat, her expression torn between relief and sorrow. "Eat, child," Jacob urged. "You're as thin as a reed." Her lips parted, but she shook her head. "He needs it more." Jacob sat across from her, studying her closely. Her face was smudged with dust, her eyes rimmed red, but her spirit was unbroken. He had seen calves abandoned in storms, foals left motherless in the field, but never had he seen a child so determined to shield another. "What's your name?" Jacob asked softly. "Lena," she replied, then, nodding at her brother. "And this is Samuel." Jacob gave a small nod. "You've come far from the river town," Lena said. Her voice cracked, and she looked away. "It's gone now. Nothing left. Just fire and sickness." Jacob's stomach sank. He had heard rumors of fever sweeping through nearby settlements, but hearing it from the lips of a child was different. He wanted to ask more, but he saw the way her shoulders stiffened every time he pressed. Instead, he leaned back, letting silence fill the space between them. Samuel licked his bowl clean, finally smiling faintly for the first time. But Lena still hadn't touched her food. Jacob pushed the plate closer, urging her once more. Slowly, reluctantly, she lifted the spoon, but her other arm never released the bundle. "What are you carrying there, Lena?" Jacob asked, his tone careful. Her eyes flashed with something unspoken fear, perhaps shame, perhaps a pain too deep to voice. She held the bundle closer to her chest, her fingers clutching it until her knuckles turned white. Please, she said, her voice almost breaking. Don't ask me. Not yet, Jacob nodded, though curiosity gnawed at him. Whatever she carried was not ordinary. He could feel it in the way she guarded it, as if the world would tear it away if she loosened her hold. The day stretched on. Jacob gave them a room, laid blankets on the bed, and let the boy rest. But Lena did not rest. She sat by the window, the bundle never leaving her lap, her eyes scanning the horizon as though expecting someone or something to come. Jacob watched her from the doorway. He saw in her the weight of an adult's burden, a soul too old for a child's body. As night fell, the ranch grew quiet. Jacob stirred the fire, the crackle of flames the only sound. He thought of the girls' words again. We don't cost much to feed. How many nights had she whispered that to strangers, hoping someone would listen? How many doors had been shut in her face before she reached his ranch? The thought made his chest ache. Finally, as the firelight flickered across the room, Jacob spoke. Lena, whatever it is you're carrying, you don't have to hide it from me. This house is safe. Lena's lips trembled. Her eyes glistened, but she bit back the tears. Slowly, painfully, she loosened the cloth. Jacob leaned forward. His breath caught in his throat. For a brief moment, he thought it might be food, or some keepsake from her parents. But when the fabric fell open just enough for him to glimpse what lay inside, his heart lurched violently. He froze. His hands shook. Whatever Lena carried, it was not what he expected. Not at all. And in that moment, Jacob knew her words were only the beginning. The truth would tear deeper than hunger ever could. Jacob's breath caught as the cloth slipped, just enough to reveal a tiny face beneath its folds, pale, still, and heartbreakingly delicate. It was the face of a baby. The bundle Lena clutched so fiercely was not some scrap of belongings or food. It was her infant sister. The rancher's hands trembled as he leaned closer, his throat tightening. Dear Lord, he whispered, his voice breaking. He looked up at Lena, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears, her chin trembling as she tried to hold herself steady. She's mine to protect, Lena said fiercely, though her voice cracked. She can't be taken. Not again. Jacob's chest ached with the pain he hadn't felt since the day he buried his wife. The baby's tiny lips were dry, her breath shallow, her body wrapped in rags that barely offered warmth. Jacob swallowed hard, struggling to form words. How long has she been like this? Since Mama. Lena stopped, pressing her lips tightly together. She rocked the bundle gently, as if movement alone could keep life clinging to the fragile child. Finally, she whispered, Mama died 3 weeks ago. Papa, he's gone too. It's just us now. I promised her. I promised Mama I'd keep them alive. Asterisk, her words carried the weight of a vow too heavy for a child, yet her eyes burned with determination. Jacob felt something crack inside him. A girl barely old enough to braid her own hair was carrying the responsibility of 3 lives: her brother, her baby sister, and herself. He drew a long, shaking breath. Lena, she needs milk, warmth, care. She won't last without it. Lena's face fell. I know, she whispered, her voice breaking for the first time. But no one would help us. They turned us away, said they didn't want sickness in their homes. They wouldn't even look at her. I begged until my voice was gone. That's when I told them we don't cost much to feed. I thought, maybe if I made us sound small, someone would take pity. Her tears finally spilled, rolling down her dirt-streaked cheeks. Jacob closed his eyes, fighting back his own emotions. He had lived long enough to see men die in storms, to watch neighbors lose everything in fire or drought. But this cruelty of turning away starving children was more than he could bear. He moved quickly, heating milk, crumbling bread into it, softening it to a mush he remembered feeding his own son in the early years. Carefully, he held the spoon to the baby's lips, but she was too weak to take it. Jacob's hands shook, but Lena guided him, whispering softly to her sister, coaxing her as only a mother would. At last, the child opened her tiny mouth and swallowed. Relief swept through Jacob like a flood. Asterisk, she'll live, he murmured, though his voice quivered with both hope and fear. The fire crackled, throwing long shadows across the room. Samuel slept soundly in the next room, his belly finally full, his little body curled under blankets. But Lena remained awake, rocking her sister, her eyes never leaving Jacob as if gauging whether she could truly trust him. Jacob leaned forward, his voice low. Lena, you don't have to carry this burden alone anymore. Let me help you. Her shoulders stiffened. Everyone says that, she whispered bitterly. Then they slammed their doors. I'm not everyone, Jacob said firmly. He reached out, laying a hand over hers. I buried my wife on this land. I raised a son here. I know what it means to fight for the ones you love. I won't turn you away. For the first time, Lena's face softened. Her lips quivered, and then, as though a dam broke, she began to sob quiet, shuddering sobs that shook her small frame. Jacob did not rush her. He let her cry, the sound mingling with the crackle of the fire and the whistle of the wind outside. When her tears finally eased, she whispered, "Mama said the world could be kind if you found the right heart." I didn't believe her anymore. Not until now. Jacob's eyes stung. He looked at the baby again, so fragile, yet clinging to life because her sister refused to let go. He knew in that moment that this encounter was not chance, it was a turning of fate. The night wore on, and Lena finally drifted to sleep in the chair, the bundle still clutched against her chest. Jacob covered her with a blanket, his rough hand brushing her tangled hair gently. He sat by the fire long into the night, staring at the flames, his mind racing. He thought of the ranch, of the quiet halls where his wife's laughter used to echo, of the son who never came back, and now these children, lost, abandoned by the world, yet placed in his path. He knew what the Lord was asking of him, even if his heart feared it. The next morning, Lena woke to the smell of eggs sizzling in the pan. Samuel was already eating happily, his cheeks fuller with color. Jacob placed a plate in front of her, but she still glanced first at the baby, making sure she stirred and breathed before touching a bite herself. Jacob noticed. He also noticed the way her hands shook, the exhaustion etched into her young face. He cleared his throat. "Lena, how long were you out there on your own?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "Since the fever took Mama. Papa buried her. But the sickness took him, too. After that, the neighbors told us to leave, said we were cursed." Her voice hardened. "We walked for days, slept in barns, under trees, every step. I thought maybe tomorrow someone would help, but nobody did." Jacob's jaw clenched. He could almost hear the cold voices of those neighbors, could almost see the door slamming shut. His fist tightened at the thought. "You'll never walk alone again," Jacob said firmly. "Not while I'm breathing." Lena looked at him, searching his face, as if weighing whether his promise could be trusted. Slowly, a flicker of hope lit her eyes. The baby whimpered softly, and Lena lifted her, rocking gently. Jacob saw it then, the way her thin arms trembled under the baby's weight, the way her face glowed with fierce protectiveness, and something inside him broke. He had thought his heart hardened beyond repair, yet here it was, splitting open. For these children he had only just met. At that moment, Jacob made his decision. "This is your home now," he said quietly, almost to himself. But the words carried the weight of an oath. "You, Samuel, and that little one. You'll have food, shelter, and a place where no one will turn you away again." Lena's lips parted, but no sound came. She stared at him, her eyes wide, her throat working as if words failed her. Then, clutching the baby tighter, she whispered, "Thank you." But deep inside, Jacob knew this was only the beginning. Whatever Lena had endured, whatever secrets lay buried in her journey, they were not finished rising. The bundles she carried had already shaken his heart. But the truth behind it, the truth still unspoken, would change everything. The days that followed settled into fragile rhythm. Samuel's laughter began to echo through the ranch. The baby grew stronger with each feeding, and Lena, though still cautious, allowed herself to breathe for the first time in weeks. Jacob watched them, each moment carving deeper into his soul, binding him to them in ways he hadn't thought possible. One evening, as the sky blazed with the colors of sunset, Lena sat on the porch with the baby in her arms, her gaze stretched far beyond the horizon, her face unreadable. Jacob joined her, lowering himself onto the step beside her. For a long time, neither spoke. The wind rustled through the grass, carrying with it the scent of earth and dust. At last, Jacob broke the silence. "Lena, I need to know the truth about her." His eyes shifted to the baby. "She's your sister, but something tells me there's more." Lena's arms tightened protectively. Her breath shuddered as she whispered, "I didn't want you to know, because I thought, if you did, you might send us away too." "You have my word," Jacob said. His voice was steady, but his chest felt heavy. Lena's lips trembled. She looked down at the baby, kissed her forehead, and then spoke words that cut through Jacob's heart. "She's not just my sister. She's my daughter." The rancher froze. The world seemed to still around him. He stared at Lena, searching her young face, praying he had misheard. But the way she cradled the baby, the way her tears fell, told him it was true. "My stepfather," she whispered, her voice breaking. He hurt me. Mama tried to stop him, but she was too weak, too sick. When the baby came, our neighbors called us cursed. They spat at us. They told me I was ruined. I swore to Mama I'd protect her, that she'd never know the pain I Did. That's why I carried her all this way. I would die before letting her go. Her words poured out like broken glass, each one slicing Jacob deeper. He looked at the child's innocent face, then back at Lena, the girl who had whispered, "We don't cost much to feed," all while carrying a burden no child should ever bear. His vision blurred with tears. Jacob's hands shook as he placed them over hers. "You listen to me, Lena," he said, his voice raw. "What happened to you was not your sin. It was evil done against you. And this child, your child, is not a curse. She's a life, a gift. And I swear before God himself, you will never be shamed again under my roof." Lena broke, sobbing into the baby's blanket. The sound tore through Jacob, but he pulled her close, holding both her and the infant as if binding them into his own heart. The ranch was no longer empty. It was filled with grief, with truth, but also with something stronger, a new family forged in pain, yet rising in love. Jacob looked out across his land, his arms wrapped around the broken girl and the child she carried. And for the first time in years, his heart was not hollow. It was whole. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give it a like. Share it with someone who needs hope today. And hit subscribe so you never miss another powerful story like this. Your support means the world and helps us keep bringing you more soul-stirring stories every single day. Thank you for watching. And until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and keep the legacy alive.